Hey y'all, happy Sunday and welcome to this week's live Q&A session. This is the portion of the show where we allow YouTube to send out notifications that we're going live. If you're watching this live Q&A on replay, please scrub ahead until this graphic disappears and the actual show begins. If you're watching live and you have any comments or questions, please go ahead and put them in the live chat. But for now, grab a beverage, sit back, and relax while the countdown timer does its thing. Then we'll get started. Ah, that nice, soft, calming music. I hear that in my sleep on Sunday nights. Okay, well, happy Sunday, y'all. That was for you, Russ. Russ Tyndall at Blue Line Wood Flags. He casually reminds me via email that when I accidentally say Happy Monday, they all kind of start running together. Oh, man. Oh, well. Today is kind of I don't know. I don't expect a huge turnout for the live Q&A today because I needed to get today's video made. Um, and I know it was pretty basic. And I tried to keep the jargon down to a minimum. I didn't really succeed. Uh, yeah. Uh, Thank you, Russ, for keeping me honest. I sure did do it last weekend, and I did it on purpose. I think I said so, but oh man, the stuff that happens behind the scenes. I need to email you, Russ. I'm gonna be in your neck of the woods in a couple weeks. Anyway, um, uh, but let me stop what I was doing and remember to jump way back up here in the chat and say hello to uh, Steve at Harneo Media. He is the sponsor of Mark Lindsay CNC.com. He's a dynamite guy. I'm proud to call him a friend. And if you are thinking about a website for your business, there is no better way to establish or increase your web presence than having a website. And Steve can help you with that. He can do as much or as little as you want him to do. Very, very competitive pricing and 100% personal service. When you're dealing with Harneo Media, you're dealing with Steve. And that's it. No nameless, faceless person in a call center that you're never going to bump into again. And I don't know how the man sleeps because he is everywhere at the same time. I know he's monitoring at least 2 live streams right now, including mine. So, Steve, hats off to you. There is a link to Harneo Media in every video on my channel. I I endorse him without hesitation. And Steve, thank you for everything you do. Um, Again, today was kind of a very, very basic video, and it was needed simply because new people get into the CNC hobby every day. And I've had a few emails over the last several weeks now of people who are following how to set X, Y datum and even Z0 position within VCarve or Aspire. But when it comes to actually going out onto the machine and applying that, uh, they didn't really know where to go. And I kind of walk a fine line here because uh, I use Mach4 and I understand not everybody does, but the principles are basically the same. Now, I'm also at a handicap because I have never used like Universal G Code Sender or G Sender or any of the proprietary software that come with something like a Axiom or a Laguna. So I don't know how your system works, but the general principles are the same. And so by helping folks get their feet wet and understand that there is a coordinate system that is, I mean, it is ancient. Rene Descartes came up with it in the 1600s. And it's just basically a way of starting at zero and moving in known points in one direction or another, be that up or down. Now, up or down or side to side. Now, I didn't get really into Z axis other than setting zero, but the principles remain the same. And At first, it's confusing as heck to wrap your head around all these numbers flying around and what have you. And it's not really crucial that you know the the Cartesian coordinate system or anything like that. But if you have a little bit of a background, um, it makes things easier to understand. Now, you may not care exactly where this rectangle is sitting on your drawing or on your workpiece, but you need to know approximately where it is. So the principles are all basically the same, no matter what controller you're using and no matter what uh, CNC router you're using. Now, some of the proprietary systems, they may use different terminology, but the principles are all basically the same. Okay, I've repeated myself enough. So let's go ahead and get into some CNC tour dates. No, we just have an event down in uh, Northern California that we're going to go to, and so I figured while I'm there, I would get a hold of Russ and say, "Hey there, hi there, oh there." So no, I have no plans on any kind of a tour. I'm lucky to get off of the property. So now Brent Mouton, I've just butchered the heck out of your name, but that's my thing. Can a 3-axis probe be used on easel in Venable's X-Carve Pro? I have to claim ignorance. I do not know. I do know that Inventables has an excellent support forum and support community. I would encourage you to get over to the Inventables website and you'll find a link under support for their support forum and ask those machine specific questions over there. Support forums are a massively underused resource. We are used to working in social media and forget that they're there. And I gotta tell you, I have learned more in support forums that have kept me from getting in trouble than I can quantify. Uh, these are the people that know your machine best. The membership of support forums are made up. Now, there may be um, there may be an employee of the company or two that are members, and then mainly for moderation, but they will answer questions here and there. Um, but the membership is mainly made up of people like you and me who own and use their machines. And they've been there, done that, got the T-shirt. Some of them are wearing it, some of them have worn it out, and you're using it to wax the car. But the point remains, they know your machine best, and I would only be guessing because I've never used Easel. I've never used your control software. Um, okay, you have reached out to their forum, and those would be the people I would poke and prod. And if worst comes to worst, if you're not getting an answer on the forum, shoot an email to their tech support. Um, I find that most of these companies, be they software companies or CNC companies, are very responsive to their customers. And if you don't contact them and ask them, uh, they're just kind of let it slide. Uh, you know, the, I know, for instance, Vectric takes these emails and these requests and these tech support questions, and that's what they use as a springboard to decide what they're going to add to their latest versions. And uh, bug fixes or updates or upgrades or what have you, that's where they get their ideas from. It's from their customers. Uh, Simply put, if something is broke, they don't know unless someone tells it. So, you know, it, yeah, I'm with you, Russell, on a lot of things. So by all means, use that resource. And if that resource is worn out without satisfaction, there are other forums like CNC Zone. There are third-party forums that are not affiliated with a manufacturer or a software publisher where you can get some good answers. They may not be able to tell you how to physically attach a touch probe to your X carve, but they may be able to get in and tell you how to set it up in the controller. So, man, I hope that answers that. I hope it kind of helps guide you in the right direction, because I would only be guessing on anything specifically machine related, unless, it's to do with something that I own or have used in the past. And I really don't want to set anybody to the wrong area. Let's see. RB Woodwork, just to the north of me here. The Triquetra P3 Auto Zero touch plate with the Triquetra toolbox works with the X-Carp. There you go. There you go. I mean, there's a place to start. At least you now have a name. And check it out. I mean, I'm willing, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm willing to bet you they also have a support forum with people that have used them on their X carves. So I would check it out. You've got nothing to lose. So, except the time it takes to type a message or something. So let's see here. Landis Stutz is asking, what are the advantages of setting Z0 off the bed versus the top of the material? The major advantage to setting Z0 off of the bed is you reduce damage to your spoil board. In that, if you're setting Z0 to the top of the machine bed and you tell it to cut through your material, regardless of how thick your material is, it's going to come down to zero and it's going to stop. Now, whether that is physically all the way through the material, whether you've attached something down in a place you've previously machined away or what have you, but it basically is to help save your spoil board and give you an accurate cut through, no matter how thick the material actually is. As flat as we want to think plywood or MDF is, you can take a dial indicator and sweep over the surface of plywood and it'll vary. And if you've watched CNC videos on YouTube, you will probably see in some cases where they're cutting through plywood or MDF, you can see when they lift a piece off of the machine, the bit cut through in some areas, but not in others. That's because of that variance. And when you set your Z0 to the material surface, it's going to cut down to a specific depth. It doesn't matter if it's actually cut into the spoil board or not quite. It's just going to cut through that to that depth. So, IL Peleg says it would only stop before the bed if your model datum is also set to the bed. Well, yes, everything I said is assuming that's what you've done. Yeah, if you set your, now you can set your Z0 to material surface, but then reference off the bed. But I'll get into that in another video. I plan on doing that video as well. But I don't want to confuse the issue now. You can do them. So, Richard, I believe you asked this in a YouTube comment, and I replied to that comment. I went through that in a video I created last month on manually surfacing a Douglas fir slab. and I show how to set Z0 with the surfacing bit in that video. So go back to your comment and check it out. Let's see here. We have more questions and comments. Sherry Peterson wants to know, what kind of laptop should I buy to operate my CAD CAM software? Okay. Now I have to ask, do you mean your CAD CAM software like VCarve Pro or Easel or what's the other one everybody likes? Carveco. If you're talking about that software, then check their system requirements. You may not need anything special. I would go for Windows based, and I know I just made a lot of Mac folks mad, but there are fewer connectivity issues and operating system issues if you get something Windows based. Now, if you're talking about your controller software that actually runs the machine, I don't like using a laptop. Laptops are all about power conservation. And so a lot of things tend to shut down or go to sleep or time out in order to save battery power. Um, I use a desktop computer out here that's dedicated to the CNC router. That's all it does. I took everything out of there that I possibly could and shut everything else down. Its entire reason for living is to run the CNC router. And you don't need much of a computer to run the controller software. It doesn't use a lot of resources. The computer I have is massive overkill, but the if you're using Windows, then I'm gonna probably frost a few cupcakes here too. If you're using Windows, just any Windows 10 based computer would be fine, or Windows 11, depending upon, and you got to check this out, if your controller software is compatible. Now, I know a lot of people are Mach 3 purists, and there have been issues with Mach 3 and Windows 10. I don't know about Windows 11. So I went ahead and with the Avid CNC, because I am using Windows 10 to control it, I went ahead and I upgraded to Mach 4, and I'm glad I did. It took the difference between Mach 4 and Mach 3 is substantial at my level. They basically took a lot of stuff out of Mach 4 that a home hobbyist like me would never use. You know, I'm not running a 5-axis production machine to make multi-million-dollar parts or 1,000 parts a day. So there's a lot of the bloat was taken out of it, and the interface was simplified, so things are a lot easier to find and use. And it's 100% compatible with Windows 10 and 11. So when you get into some of the legacy hardware and software with some of the older control software, as updates come out, or not, as the or not as the case may be, it's sometimes it's better to go ahead and upgrade. Yeah, it's a little bit extra money, but what the heck. So Pablo Diablo's asking, don't you need internet access for Mach 4? No, you do not. There are two ways you can license Mach 4. One is with an internet connection. And that's what I did. I had it hooked to the internet when I licensed Mach 4 to this computer. But then I unplugged it, took it off, and Mach 4 does not need internet access to run at all. So, let's see here. Let's see. Did I miss something? Did Landis have a follow up to his question? Okay, no, Ayal is just helping him with. Okay, all right. Getting a little bit more technical. Okay, Matt Haas, awesome wood things. Check out his channel, by the way. My last CNC project was very complicated. Yeah, I saw that. What project could I make that has the highest simple to awesome ratio? You're the only person who can answer that, Matt. Only you know what is awesome to you. Uh, Shop art is always cool. Stuff in the background in videos, like the stuff I don't have. It's always cool. uh, that is so subjective. I mean, what do you consider awesome? What do you consider simple? Just let your imagination go nuts. When I was first starting out, I basically held to things I needed. And I it that kind of limited me in that I wasn't really getting into um, learning the machine all that much, but I was learning the machine at the same time. You know, there are some things out there that people just automatically like. The initial monograms, um, heck, even an address sign for the front of the house. Whether you put it up or not, you don't have to put it up, but just cutting it, making it artistic, making it tasteful, and making it reflect your personality, whether you put it outside the house or just put it in your shop somewhere. I mean, the thing is to learn the machine, learn your software, and push your techniques. I mean, Matt, I mean, being a long term digital creator, you know that there is nothing digital that can't be fixed, even if that means scrapping it and starting over. Uh, just get in and push your personal limits, you know, let your creativity go. Preview early, preview often, and save early, save often. And, you know, the, this is the same as anything else, whether it be learning how to drive or learning how to play an instrument or learning another language. There is no replacement for experience. And the only way to get that experience is to do it. And, I jump on to Facebook, or not Facebook Marketplace. I get on Craigslist and look at the free section and look for scrap wood that's on its way to the landfill. And I mean, you can see down on the floor right there, you can see a fence board. There's a couple more back behind it uh, that I'm learning to tile on. And because, yes, a tiling video will be coming. Don't know exactly when, but a tiling video will be coming. But I've got to practice it because I don't feel comfortable presuming to show you how I do something if I've never done it myself. So, um, just practice. Whatever you want to make. Let's see here. Brooks Martin says, what are your thoughts on zeroing by loosely chucking the bit and lowering the spindle router into the surface, then tighten and zero? I've not really explored that method myself, but I know a gentleman in Australia. I've mentioned him before. His name is John. His business is called Labels Extreme. And he makes absolutely gorgeous inlays for luthiers. He inlays fretboards with mother of pearl, shell, and various other materials. And he has 3 CNC routers that are dedicated to small tasks like this. And some of the pieces he cuts are so intricate. I mean, he has done inlays that take hundreds of pieces. And that's how he sets his Z0 with his tiny bits. I mean, some of these bits are smaller than a quarter of a millimeter. And he will loosely put that bit in the collet, bring his Z down until the collet is around the shank enough to hold that bit firmly, set his Z0, then tighten that collet to hold that bit, then finish, raise it up, finish wrench tightening it there. I've not explored that method myself. I would want to practice on it because basically he's using bits that are so tiny. If he even attempted to use a touch plate, it would just shatter the bit. And he buys them in 10 packs because he knows he's going to break bits on every project. And he'll go through 5 or 6 bits doing an inlay. But that's why he charges what he charges. But the man is an absolute artist. Really, really awesome. So, um, let's see here. Let's see. Russell Faraday has a tip of the day. A 10 millimeter ball nose at 1% step over added an hour to my tool path, but it equaled 5 minutes of sanding instead of 5 hours. That is that's a rough balance there, Russell. I get where you're coming from, and I probably agree with you more than you would ever know. I see a lot of people, me included, get hung up on the amount of machine time something takes. Again, I'm a hobbyist. I'm not trying to put out 100 or 1,000 parts a day. I'm just looking to get a good final result. That's what's important to me. So if something takes 7 hours or 9 hours, I don't care. I'm there for the duration. I want a good end product. And I will agree with you that when you look at a balance like that, 1 hour extra machine time versus 5 hours of sanding time, hands down, give me the 1 hour of machine time because that's the main reason for the machine, to do the things I can't or don't want to do by hand. So, yeah, I'm all for it. So, let's see here. Uh Terrence Lionel says, can you convert a PNG to a 3D model in Vectric? You can in Aspire, but it's not a push button operation. There are a lot of steps involved. If you look in the description of this live stream and a good number of my live streams previous to this, you'll find a link to a channel run by Michael Mazalik. He is my 3D guru. He is an absolute artist when it comes to 3D. You'll quickly discover that there are a lot of steps involved. Uh, there is no software that'll take a PNG, push a couple buttons, and it's 3D. That software doesn't exist. There is some work to be done. You'll have to trace that PNG file, trace the outlines, then apply shapes, bring in shape heights and blend and smooth and things like that. 3D modeling is in many, many, many ways an artwork, a an art of its own. So yes, Vectric Aspire is capable of doing it. But there's a lot more to it than just the software. It's also up to you, and you have to practice. You have to get in and do it. You have to make mistakes, and you have to perfect your craft. But I would start with Michael Mazalik, and there's a link to his channel down in the description of this video. So, and oh, hey, this is what I mean by Steve Nealon over at Harneal Media. He's right on top of it. There's a link to Michael's channel right there. I mean, he's everywhere. He's everywhere. Let's see here. Let's go down and look at a few. You guys are coming up with some good questions, I'll tell you what. Matt Haas, awesome wood things. My CNC Shark came with a touchscreen controller thingy. Okay. G code from VCarve desktop file goes on a USB and the CNC does its thing. What am I missing not using Mach 3 and 4? Not a thing. Not a thing. There is absolutely not a thing wrong with the controller that your machine uses. Mach 3 and Mach 4. Mach 3 was actually developed for machining, for machine shops, for big CNC mills and what have you. But the price point made it so attractive to the home CNC hobby that home CNCers just dove on it. And I would go out on a limb and say Mach 3 is probably more responsible for the proliferation of home CNC routers before Gerbil and like Universal G Code Sender and G Sender and the rest of them came along. I would say that Mach 3 is single-handed responsible for more people getting involved in having a home CNC. You're not missing a thing. Your controller is perfectly capable of doing anything that Mach 3 or Mach 4 is doing. So I wouldn't even consider making a change. I really wouldn't. So, and not only that, it's proprietary. Let it go. So, let's see here. Chris Copenal says, do you notice smoother motion with the newer motion controllers versus the UC100? I've never used a UC100. The Avid CNC came with a dedicated controller right here that runs all of the axes, nice and smooth. My Gatton CNC, I was using Mach 3 with an old, and I mean old, HP desktop. I ran on parallel port. I never used a UC100. I've never used USB control for CNC. As far as smooth motion is concerned, I don't know. Not having used a UC100, I don't have anything to compare it to, but I never had an issue running Mach 3 through the parallel port. And because I did run it through parallel port, I didn't have the problems I saw other folks having with the UC100 just deciding it didn't want to connect right now and having an issue, or USB port going to sleep or slowing down a data transfer rate. I never had that issue. So I really can't comment on a smoothness of operation other than to say I never had a problem running through parallel port. And the Avid runs through its own proprietary system, and oh man, is this sucker. It's a beast. It really is a beast. Oh man, this this fall spring has really got my allergies kicking up, and I really hope something happens here because I don't want to go through this twice this year or twice this spring. Okay, let's see. Peter Van Vliet says, If using tiny bits for fine movements, wouldn't it make more sense to use metric than imperial, since a very small movement is finer in millimeters? For example, 1/1000th of an inch is larger than 1/1000th of a millimeter. Um, this is wading into the whole metric versus imperial thing. The distance is the same, Peter, regardless of whether you measure it in millimeters or inches. My opinion is use what's comfortable for you. If you're used to working in metric, use metric. If you're used to working in imperial, use imperial. If your G code tells your CNC router to move that much, does it matter if it's millimeters or inches? No, it's still that much. A piece of paper has a thickness. Whether you express that thickness in millimeters or inches is irrelevant. A step is a step. It doesn't matter whether it's measured in millimeters or inches. If you're comfortable working in millimeters, by all means, use millimeters. If you're comfortable working in imperial, by all means, work in imperial. It it doesn't matter, is what I'm saying. So let's see here. Matt says, just curious, how small is a single step of a stepper motor? That depends. There are so many variables there, it's not even funny. Someone said that there are 80 steps per millimeter, and maybe it is on their machine. I'll give you an example. And again, I've got to go with steps per inch because I use Imperial. On some motors, uh, my steps per inch on the Gatton CNC was 3,200. On others, it was 3,150. It just depends. It depends on, oh, there are so many variables. It's not even funny. So there we go. This is a trick question. There are a few variables. How many steps per revolution, how many millimeters per revolution, and how many micro steps. Exactly, because you can set up your controllers, the micro stepping on your controllers to where it takes 6,400 steps to equal an inch. I mean, it just depends on everything. There's a whole bunch of variables. So if you want to know about your machine specifically, what you can do is get a hold of NextWave and ask them what it is with factory specs. I don't think you probably haven't changed your setup from factory specs, so you could ask them what it is from the factory. But even then, things change. If you've calibrated a machine, that will change the steps per unit. So, and that's what I mean when I talk about some motors on my Z-axis on the Gatton CNC, the steps per unit were slightly lower, and that was done to calibrate so that when I tell that Z-axis to move an inch, it actually moves an inch, not 0.9875 or something like that. IL Peleg says, I think micro steps are not actually steps in the sense that you cannot mode a single micro step. I don't, I haven't, I haven't dived into it that deep, but I'm not, I think you may be right on that, but don't quote me. I am not an expert. And believe me, I'm not an expert when it comes to controllers or electronics. I don't think you can move a single microstep, but I may be wrong. So, let's see here. Did I catch up on the? Holy cow! I caught up on the questions. Let me scroll back up and make sure that I didn't miss any. And now I'm going to butcher this name. Am I correct in saying it's Itan Tal? Blender is free, so no worries. You can get your PNG imported in for no extra cost. Let me find you a link to a video showing how to do it. The only problem is you can't post links in the chat. Only moderators and me can do that. But yes, you can certainly look for Blender uh, all over the place. Blender is a good program. It's an dynamite program. And I've seen some things coming out of Blender that would just blow your mind. My problem with Blender is the learning curve is like that. And I just do not have the time to dedicate to it. So, let's see. Whoops. Chris Copenal says, do you see smoother motion and cutting versus the older parallel port options? I should have said, is it worth updating motion controllers? Well, again, the only things I have to compare it with are the parallel port and then Avid's proprietary system. But also, it was a change in drive systems as well, where on the Gatton CNC, I had lead screws and anti-backlash lead nuts. On this one, I have rack and pinion on the Y and on the X, and then ball screw on the Z. So there is definitely smoother motion with linear bearings and rack and pinion on the X and Y. Definitely smoother. The Z, it's hard telling. I mean, ball screw is a bit smoother than lead screw, but only just. I mean, there is a slight. Uh, I don't know. You would really have to. I mean, absolutely study that how that machine is working for you in both conditions. Um, Now, personally, to try to answer your question here, when you ask, is it worth updating motion controllers? Only you can answer that. I am old school. I know that doesn't compute with CNC routers, but I truly believe that if it ain't broke, don't fix it till it is. Just, if it's working, I leave it alone. I have no complaints. If you are trying to get more speed out of your machine, then you're probably going to want to look at either larger motors or a change in the drive system. But if you're just, you know, chasing numbers can drive you crazy, and chasing smoothness can drive you crazy. In the guitar world, chasing tone can drive you crazy. And I mean, you can drill down into it so far that you get to the point to it's like, why? I have this discussion with machinists when they're talking about, well, yeah, but you need to be able to get down and measure to the micromillimeter. My question is, why? I have a builder's tolerance of a 16th of an inch. I don't need to know the micromillimeter. I don't need 4 and 5 digit resolution on a CNC router that I'm doing woodworking on. Half the time, I don't even need 3 digit, but we try to be as perfect as we can. Well, it's the same situation when chasing smooth operation. If you're having issues, if your machine is jerking, I always say, always check the mechanical first. Look for binding. If your machine is jerking and running sluggish, something is binding. So check your mechanical first. But if it's moving nice and smooth and you have no issues, I tend to leave things alone. So, so Peter Van Vliet says, if I'm manually entering G movements on the controller for relative movements and specify a G1, 01 X 0.001, would the amount be the same whether the controller is set to metric or imperial? Obviously, no. Because, as you said, a 1,000th of a millimeter is smaller than 1,000th of an inch. But what you're going to have to remember is, well, here we go. Just like J Scotch A, I probably just butchered that. The G code will set that. A G20 specifies imperial and a G21 specifies metric. That's set by your post processor. If your G code file was created in imperial, that's what it's going to move. If it's created in metric, that's going to what it's going to move. So yes, you're right. If you declare I want it to move 0.001 millimeters, then yeah, it's going to move a smaller amount. But I have to ask, when are you going to run into that situation? If you are that concerned, then design your program in millimeters. Okay, right? But doing manual movements on the controller sometimes involves no G code file. Okay, and you're right. So what you can do is you can use that MDI line to specify G20 for imperial, G21 for metric, and then move it that amount. Or you can do the math and come up with the imperial or metric equivalent. If you're working in both metric and imperial on the same file, I'm not the guy to ask. You're on your own. Personally, I think that if you need that kind of precision where you're working in thousandths of a millimeter, you need to be designing in metric and working to that level of precision, because I just generally do not. So, let's see here. Hey, Lainey, how are you doing? Um, Isle Peleg says, I think usually when working with inches, you can use 3 decimal places, and in millimeters, you can use only 2 decimal places. My controller will go 4 decimal places no matter what unit of measure you're working in, Mach4. And I believe Mach3 does 4 decimal places as well. But yeah, you can get way down in the weeds on that. So, but yeah, my Mach4 works in 4 digits. Now, Vectric software also will round up or down as the case may be. I believe, and Michael, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe you can go in and you can get into options and set that so it doesn't round up, that it will go to 4 digits, but I may be wrong. But if you look, like if you put in a measurement of a 32nd of an inch, 0.03125, it will round up to 0.0313. So, but then again, half a thou when I'm talking about a V carving doesn't matter. So, okay, yes, correct. You can get in and change it to where it doesn't round, that it will hold 4 decimal places. But again, if your controller won't run on to 4 decimal places, then it's irrelevant. It's going to round up or down as it sees fit, not fits. So, yeah, and Laney also backs that up. Yes, you can specify the number of decimals. So, sent you another email, Laney, before you went to the woodworking show. Glad you made it back safely. Let's see. Yes, suicidal at all times. It's exactly, and it's still the best YouTube username ever. Machine may not hold 4 decimals, right? That's possible. Okay, Gary N says, I'm coming in late. Disregard if you have covered. Could you explain how one can restart a job at the point it ended, I'm guessing, that has stopped due to a power outage? That could be an entire live stream of its own. It's going to depend on your setup. Um, if you have a 3-way touch plate, easy peasy lemon squeezy. I did it. I did a video on that. Let me write a note to myself. I'll post a link to that video in the description as soon as we're done live. If you have set up work offsets or a fixture offset in your controller, uh, it your X, Y, and Z position can be recovered easily. Which line you were in the controller software, which line you were on, that's just kind of an I hesitate to say arbitrary, but it kind of is an arbitrary thing. You're going to have to scroll through that G code and find where you were when the power went out, and then start from that line. And that can be hard to do, especially if you were like 6 hours into an 8-hour carve. You don't want to repeat all the first 4 hours or the first 6 hours that you've already done. Um, you know, it's it's a son of a gun. So yeah, you're kind of on your own as far as that's concerned. Most controllers will let you scan through the G code and display it in a toolpath preview off to the side. And when you get to an area that is roughly within the ballpark of where the power went out, let's say, you can kind of scroll back a little bit and start from that line. But a AJ Hockey is on it. I always set up a work offset for every job. That way you can always return to the right starting position. Yeah. And in my video, I did about establishing a work offset um, and fixture offset. And I'll link that too. That whole video was about doing exactly that, a known location on your CNC router. I used dowel pins. Mount the corner in that area, then I can always go right back. So, you know, saying the wrong word is my thing. When I say controller software, I mean G code senders. G code senders are used by some uh, controller software and not by others. So, Matt, I will post a link to that work offset video as soon as we're done live here, because that's where I get into all of that work offset, fixture offset, the whole thing. So I do not mean to say that controller software and controllers are the same, but the controller software / G code sender, it depends on your manufacturer. I mean, it's semantics really, but no, the software on your PC does not physically move the machine. That's done by the controller, which is on my machine right there with the big red button on it. So, recording the line you're on from time to time. Oh, John Lackey, that is an excellent point. That really is an excellent point. recording what line your controller is on from time to time. And you can generally go back to that line and start from here. So if in my example, you're 6 hours into a 8-hour carve, every half hour, just mark what line number you're on. That way, if your power does go out, you've got a starting point anyway. Excellent tip, John. Thank you very much for that. So, okay. Let's see. We're an hour in. Oh man. Steve, you are awesome. You are the man, the myth, the legend. And, wow, what can I say? All right, let's take this, Gary, in for the last question here. When using a ramp of, say, 1 inch to do a pocket, for example, will the router move left or right of the workpiece, possibly hitting a hold down clamp, or does it stay within the workpiece boundary? It depends on how close that pocket is to the boundary. Generally speaking, the router shouldn't move outside of the workpiece boundary, but you also have to remember that you have a spindle and a mount and everything else. So that bit sticking out of my fist is the spindle. That bit may clear that clamp, but if you got something threaded that spindle actually hits, you may be in trouble. It shouldn't move outside of that workpiece boundary, but check your clearances before you do that. This is another reason why I don't use clamps. I try to find an alternate mounting method that'll keep that spindle away from clamps. I've seen people use threaded knobs onto aluminum clamps to hold down the workpiece, and that threaded rod was just tall enough that when the spindle went by, the bit and the collet cleared it just fine, but something on the housing grabbed it and pulled it over, and catastrophic failure. And let's see here. IL says, even if you jump to the same G-code line, you have to make sure you're in the right place with the spindle so you don't hit something that you did not plan to hit. Absolutely. You will also need to manually start the spindle. Okay, he's talking about recovering from a power failure. Yes, you will need to manually restart it because you're missing those M commands that tell it to the spindle to turn on and all that other good stuff. You'll also probably have to set your spindle RPM manually as well because because it's going to miss all those commands as well, now that I think about it. So good point. But I don't know, work holding is one of those things I'm very biased on. I don't like clamps. I don't trust them. So I use other methods. I mean, if there's a way you can put up a fence and clamp from the side, then I would try to go for that and experiment, you know. So Brooks and I all are on the same page. Plus, don't forget the header G codes to set up the work environment. Yeah, and possibly also set units and speeds, possibly. And you can, when you back up a line, look for those feeds and feed rates and plunge rates. Because like if something picks up and move, for instance, if it's a long carve, but you have an area where the bit lifts up out of the material and does a rapid or a jog over to the next location, if you take that line where it's actually moving that will set your feed rates and what have you. Won't have anything to do with router or spindle RPMs, but you know, um, good point. Ensuring the spindle doesn't touch the clamps. I travel near each clamp, then look at the toolpath preview window in Mach 3 or Mach 4 or whichever control software you have, G-code sender software you have, and see that I'm well outside what's planned. Yes. Yes. Loaded question, Tim. All of them, depending upon what you want to do. All controllers work well. I mean, if they didn't work, people wouldn't use them. There are some that people perceive to be better than others, but that's subjective. I mean, now we're into the Chevrolet versus Ford or BMW versus Mercedes argument. I mean, they all work well. If they didn't, people wouldn't use them. So, okay, let's go ahead and wrap this up for today. Let's see. Next week will be an open Q&A. And the week after that, as some of you can see by what's on the machine behind me, the next video is going to be me repairing my spoil board. So if you're interested in repairing a spoil board, boy, have I got a video planned for y'all. If you are not interested, no, check it out. You may like it anyway. uh, Channel members, live stream tomorrow evening at 5:30 Pacific, 8:30 Eastern. Got a couple of small things planned, but we'll see where the conversation goes as usual. If you would like information on how to become a channel member, just click the join button down there next to the subscribe button. Panel will pop up and a video will play that'll tell you all about channel membership. Also, channel members, don't forget to hit my community tab. That's where I post just posts and polls. You guys decided that I was going to do today's video this week and my spoil board video next week. And I'll see you. It's also where I post the link to the members only live stream. So see you guys tomorrow. And other than that, can't think of anything else I need to say. I got a couple of emails to send. I'm caught up on everything. Thank you for spending part of your Sunday with me. And thank you to everybody who is watching, liking, commenting, sharing these videos. If you know an absolute beginner that needs some of this stuff, by all means, share the videos with them. My goal is to help folks get comfortable running their machine. Not everybody has done this kind of thing, and we can get down in the weeds real easy, but we all have to start somewhere. And my goal is to try to show everybody that you can do this. This is not over your head. There's no mystery. There's no magic. All you have to do is get in and do it. So, y'all have a good day. Take care and see you next week. Thank you very much.